Welcome back to our Reddit cheating stories. Thanks tuning in. Where are you watching from? Comment and let's dive in. The late nights at the office that stretched later and later, the excuses about client dinners and urgent deadlines. The way she held her phone close, a nervous tick around her fingers as she scrolled through messages she wouldn't let me see. The way she smiled, then quickly masked it, when a certain name, Mark, popped up on her screen. Mark. The name tasted like ash in my mouth. He was a new hire at her firm, young, ambitious, and oozing the kind of effortless charm that made me, a slightly balding software engineer, feel like I was auditioning for a role I'd already lost. I could have confronted her. I could have demanded answers, staged a dramatic scene, screamed and yelled until my voice was hoarse. But I'm not wired that way. Confrontation makes me clam up, and even the thought of a shouting match with Sarah made my skin crawl. Besides, I suspected she'd deny it, gaslight me, turn it around and accuse me of being insecure or paranoid. So, I did what any self-respecting, albeit slightly passive-aggressive, husband would do. I decided to orchestrate my own exit, a slow burn of psychological warfare designed to expose her deceit and leave her reeling in the wake of my carefully planned disappearance. My plan was simple. In theory, I would make her think I was having an affair. Plant the seeds of doubt, cultivate her insecurities, and watch as the same paranoia that gnawed at me consumed her. Then, when she was completely convinced of my infidelity, I would vanish. Poof. Gone. A ninja exit, leaving behind only questions and a lingering sense of guilt. Phase 1, the subtle hints. I started staying late at the office myself, claiming a critical project needed my undivided attention. I'd come home smelling vaguely of perfume, a scent I'd carefully acquired at a Sephora counter, ensuring it was a brand Sarah wouldn't recognize. I'd leave the occasional lipstick stain on my collar, a carefully placed smudge that screamed infidelity. The first few times, Sarah didn't react. She was too preoccupied with her own secrets to notice the breadcrumbs I was leaving. But slowly, I saw the cracks appear. She started scrutinizing my clothes when I came home, sniffing my neck, searching for clues. Her questions became sharper, more pointed. Working late again, honey, she'd ask, her voice tight. Yeah, I'd reply, feigning exhaustion. This project is a killer. But it'll be worth it in the end. I watched her eyes, searching for the flicker of doubt, the seed of suspicion taking root. It was there, I could see it. And it fueled me. Next, I introduced the mystery woman. I started receiving text messages at odd hours, messages with only emojis, a winking face, a dancing lady, a suggestive eggplant. I made sure Sarah saw them, casually leaving my phone face up on the coffee table, the notifications buzzing tantalizingly. She would steal glances at my phone, her brow furrowed in concentration. I could practically feel her mind racing, trying to decipher the cryptic messages. One evening, she finally broke. "Who's texting you at this hour?" she asked, her voice laced with a thinly veiled accusation. "Just a colleague," I said, shrugging. "We're brainstorming ideas for the project." "A colleague who sends eggplant emojis," she retorted, her voice rising. I chuckled, a low, disarming sound. "You know how millennials are," I said. "Everything's emojis these days." It was a weak explanation, but it was enough to keep her guessing. The seed of doubt had sprouted, and I was meticulously watering it. I even went as far as creating a fake email account for my non-existent mistress. I'd send myself emails with vague promises of rendezvous and whispered secrets, making sure Sarah had ample opportunity to stumble upon them while I was in the shower or out running errands. The subject lines were carefully crafted to pique her curiosity, "Remember last night," or "Can't wait to see you again." It was manipulative, I knew. Cruel, even. But I was past the point of caring about being the good guy. I was hurt, betrayed, and fueled by a potent cocktail of anger and resentment. I wanted her to feel the same pain I was feeling, to experience the crushing weight of doubt and insecurity. As the weeks passed, Sarah became increasingly withdrawn and suspicious. She stopped initiating conversations, avoided eye contact, and spent most of her time glued to her phone, presumably exchanging messages with Mark. The tension in the house was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. I knew my plan was working. She was consumed by the idea of my infidelity, just as I had been consumed by hers. the tables had turned. Then came the grand finale, the staged date. I told Sarah I had to work late on a Saturday, claiming a critical system update required my immediate attention. Instead, I booked a table at a swanky restaurant on the other side of town, a place I knew Sarah frequented with her colleagues. I arrived at the restaurant early, dressed in a suit I rarely wore and sporting a confident swagger I didn't entirely feel. I ordered a glass of wine and waited, my heart pounding in my chest. A few minutes later, Sarah walked in. Her eyes widened in shock as she spotted me sitting alone at the table, a half-empty glass of wine in front of me. I watched as her face contorted with a mixture of confusion, anger, and hurt. She hesitated for a moment, then turned and fled, disappearing back onto the busy street. I watched her go, a wave of conflicting emotions washing over me. Relief that my plan had worked, guilt for the pain I had inflicted, and a profound sense of sadness for what we had lost. I paid the bill and left the restaurant, feeling like a ghost in my own life. I drove home, packed a bag with a few essentials, and wrote Sarah a note. I know about Mark, I wrote. And I know you know about her. We're even. I'm leaving. Don't try to find me. I left the note on the kitchen counter, grabbed my bag, and walked out the door. It was the last time I would ever see our house. The next few weeks were a blur. I drove aimlessly, staying in cheap motels, eating greasy diner food, and trying to outrun the guilt and sadness that clung to me like a second skin. I deactivated my social media accounts, changed my phone number, and cut off all contact with friends and family. I was a ghost, drifting through the world, untethered and alone. I ended up in a small coastal town in Oregon, a place I had always dreamed of visiting. I found a small, run-down cottage overlooking the ocean and rented it on a month-to-month basis. The sound of the waves crashing against the shore was soothing, a constant reminder of the vastness of the world and the insignificance of my problems. I got a job as a handyman, fixing leaky faucets, painting houses, and doing odd jobs for the locals. It was honest work, and it kept me busy. I didn't have much money, but I had enough to survive. I spent my days exploring the coastline, hiking through the dense forests, and reading books on the beach. I learned to surf, to appreciate the beauty of nature, and to find solace in my own company. Slowly, I started to heal. The pain of Sarah's betrayal began to fade, replaced by a sense of acceptance and a newfound appreciation for myself. I realized that I had been so focused on trying to fix our marriage that I had forgotten to take care of myself. One evening, as I was sitting on my porch watching the sunset, I received a text message from an unknown number. I know where you are, the message read. My heart skipped a beat. How could she have found me? I had been so careful to cover my tracks. A few minutes later, a car pulled up to my cottage. Sarah stepped out, her face pale and drawn. We need to talk, she said, her voice trembling. I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I knew this day would come eventually. We sat on the porch, the silence broken only by the sound of the waves. Sarah started to cry. I'm so sorry, she said, her voice choked with emotion. I messed up. I made a terrible mistake. She went on to explain that she had been unhappy in our marriage for a long time, feeling neglected and unappreciated. She had found comfort in Mark's attention, and one thing had led to another. It was a mistake, she repeated. I never meant to hurt you. I listened in silence, my heart aching for both of us. I knew that her apology was sincere, but it didn't change the fact that she had betrayed me. I know, I said finally. But it's too late. I can't forgive you. Sarah nodded, tears streaming down her face. I understand, she said. I don't expect you to. We sat in silence for a few more minutes, then Sarah stood up to leave. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, she said. And that I'll always love you. She turned and walked back to her car, disappearing into the night. I watched her go, feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. It wasn't the happy ending I had once dreamed of, but it was an ending nonetheless. The next morning, I packed my bags and left the cottage. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there any longer. It was time to start a new chapter, to build a new life for myself. I drove south, towards California, the sun on my face and the wind in my hair. I didn't have a plan, but I had hope. Hope for a brighter future, hope for a love that was true, and hope for a life filled with peace and happiness. The ninja had vanished, leaving behind only a ghost of a memory. And in his place, a new man was emerging, ready to face the world with courage and resilience. The end. Or maybe, just maybe, it was only the beginning. The months turned into years. I drifted through California, working odd jobs, meeting interesting people, and slowly piecing together a new identity. The name David felt like a distant echo, a phantom limb of a life I no longer recognized. I became Dave, a simpler, more rugged version of my former self. I learned to surf properly, chasing waves up and down the coast. I embraced the laid-back California lifestyle, shedding the anxieties and insecurities that had plagued me for so long. I even started dating again, cautiously dipping my toes back into the treacherous waters of romance. But despite the outward appearance of a carefree existence, the scars of my past remained. The betrayal had left a deep wound, a lingering distrust that made it difficult to fully commit to anyone. I found myself constantly second-guessing people's motives, searching for hidden agendas and subtle signs of deception. One day, while working as a carpenter on a beachfront property in Malibu, I met a woman named Maya. She was an artist, a free spirit with a contagious laugh and eyes that sparkled with intelligence and kindness. She was unlike anyone I had ever met before. Maya saw past my hardened exterior, recognizing the pain and vulnerability that I tried so hard to conceal. She didn't judge me for my past, nor did she pry into my secrets. She simply accepted me for who I was, flaws and all. Slowly, cautiously, I began to open up to her. I told her about Sarah, about the affair, about the elaborate plan I had concocted to expose her betrayal. I spared no detail, laying bare the darkest corners of my soul. To my surprise, Maya didn't recoil in horror. She listened patiently, offering words of comfort and understanding. She told me that she admired my resilience, my ability to pick myself up and move on after such a devastating experience. "You were hurt," she said. "And you reacted in a way that you thought would protect you. It wasn't the healthiest way to deal with it, but it's understandable." Her words were like a balm to my wounded spirit. For the first time in years, I felt truly seen and understood. As our relationship deepened, I started to realize that I was still carrying a lot of baggage from my marriage. The anger, the resentment, the fear of betrayal, it was all weighing me down, preventing me from fully embracing the present. Maya encouraged me to seek therapy, to talk through my feelings with a professional. I resisted at first, convinced that I could handle it on my own. But eventually, I realized that she was right. I needed help. Therapy was difficult, painful even. But it was also incredibly liberating. I learned to forgive Sarah, not for her sake, but for my own. I learned to let go of the anger and resentment that had been poisoning my life. And I learned to trust again, to believe that not all women were like Sarah. With Maya's love and support, and with the help of therapy, I finally began to heal. The scars of my past would always be there, but they no longer defined me. I was no longer a victim, but a survivor. One sunny afternoon, as we were walking along the beach, Maya stopped and turned to me, her eyes sparkling with love. "Dave," she said, "I love you. I love you for who you are, for your strength, your vulnerability, and your capacity for love. Will you marry me?" Tears welled up in my eyes. I had never thought I would hear those words again, especially not from someone as amazing as Maya. "Yes," I said, my voice choked with emotion. "Yes, I will marry you." We embraced, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore like a symphony of hope and renewal. We were married a year later in a small ceremony on the beach, surrounded by our closest friends and family. It was the happiest day of my life. As I stood there, holding Maya's hand, I realized that I had finally found what I had been searching for all along, a love that was true, a love that was unconditional, and a love that would last a lifetime. The ninja had finally found peace. He had vanished from his old life, leaving behind the pain and betrayal, and in his place, a new man had emerged, ready to embrace the future with open arms and a grateful heart. Sarah, on the other hand, didn't fare so well. After I left, she tried to salvage her relationship with Mark, but it was too late. The guilt and shame of her affair had poisoned their connection, and they eventually broke up. She tried to contact me, to apologize and ask for forgiveness, but I refused to speak to her. I had moved on, and I didn't want to reopen old wounds. I heard through mutual friends that she had gone through a difficult period, struggling with depression and loneliness. She eventually sought therapy and started to rebuild her life, but she never fully recovered from the damage she had caused. Years later, I received a letter from Sarah. It was a long, heartfelt apology, expressing her remorse for her actions and her hope that I had found happiness. I read the letter with mixed emotions. Part of me felt a flicker of sympathy for her, but another part of me was still angry and resentful. I never responded to the letter. I didn't see any point in reopening old wounds. I had moved on, and I hoped that she had too. Life is full of unexpected twists and turns, of heartbreak and healing, of loss and redemption. My journey had been a long and arduous one, but it had ultimately led me to a place of peace and happiness. I had learned that forgiveness is not about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing yourself from the burden of anger and resentment. I had learned that love is not about possession or control, but about trust and acceptance. And I had learned that even after the darkest of nights, the sun will always rise again. The end. Please subscribe to our channel, like and share your thoughts.